Sharpness. Sharpness is the enchantment for players who believe the best defense is a really, really good offense. Unlike specialized combat enchantments that only work on certain mobs, Sharpness boosts damage against literally everything that can take a hit. At level 1, it adds 1 extra damage point, or half a heart, to every swing. By level 5, you're dealing an extra 3 damage points, 1.5 hearts, with each attack. This might not sound like much until you realize that's essentially giving your diamond sword the base damage of a netherite one, or turning your netherite sword into an absolute monster. In PvP, those extra points can mean the difference between walking away victorious or respawning back at your base wondering what went wrong. The downside? It's mutually exclusive with Smite and Bane of Arthropods, so you need to make the choice of whether you want to be really good against everything or exceptional against specific enemy types. Most players choose Sharpness because, well, let's face it, specialization is great until you're facing down a creeper with your anti-undead sword. Smite. Smite is the specialized enchantment for players who are sick and tired of the undead. While Sharpness gives you a modest damage boost against everything, Smite turns your weapon into an absolute nightmare for zombies, skeletons, wither skeletons, zombified piglins, drowned, and anything else that should probably stay in the grave. At level 1, it adds 2.5 extra damage points or 1.25 hearts against undead mobs. By level 5, that jumps to a whopping 12.5 extra damage or 6.25 hearts, meaning you can one-shot most undead creatures with a critical hit from a decent sword. It's the perfect enchantment for clearing out dungeons, surviving zombie sieges, or making your way through the nether without 20 wither skeletons turning you into a pincushion. The trade-off is obvious. Against anything that isn't undead, Smite is about as useful as a wooden shovel against obsidian. But if you're planning a trip to a pillaged nether fortress or want to farm wither skeleton skulls without spending half your life doing it, Smite 5 is your best friend. Sweeping Edge. Sweeping Edge is the Java Edition exclusive that turns your sword from a precision instrument into a lawnmower for mobs. Normally, when you swing a sword, you hit your target and do a small amount of sweep damage to nearby enemies, about 1 heart at best. With Sweeping Edge, that sweep damage gets a serious upgrade. At level 1, you'll deal 50% of your main attack damage to all surrounding mobs. At level 3, the max level, that jumps to a full 75%, meaning you're essentially hitting everything in a small radius with most of your sword's power. This makes crowd control ridiculously effective, letting you clear out spawners, caves, or that village that accidentally turned into a zombie apocalypse with just a few strategic swings. The downside? It's completely absent from Bedrock Edition, leaving those players stuck manually hitting each mob like they're playing whack-a-mole. For Java players, though, there's nothing more satisfying than watching 10 zombies fall with 3 swings like you're the star of your own medieval action movie. Windburst. Windburst is what happens when Minecraft decides physics should be optional. This enchantment turns your weapon into a bizarre mobility tool. Every time you land a hit, you get launched into the air like you're wearing invisible jump boots. At level 1, it gives you a modest hop, barely enough to jump over a fence. By level 3, though, you're practically doing acrobatics in combat, soaring several blocks up with each successful attack. It's perfect for creating distance between you and a creeper about to explode, reaching ledges that are just a little too high, or just adding some dramatic flair to your PvP encounters. The strategic applications are endless. Bounce away from danger, reach higher ground during a fight, or even chain attacks for an impromptu parkour session. Of course, it can backfire if you're fighting near lava or the edge of a cliff, sending you bouncing straight into your own doom. But for players who think combat should be more like a 3-dimensional chess match than a straightforward slugfest, Windburst adds a whole new dimension to sword fights, literally. Channeling. Channeling is the enchantment that lets you play God with the weather. Slap this onto a trident and suddenly you're Thor himself. During a thunderstorm, any mob you hit gets struck by lightning. Not just a visual effect, but actual damage-dealing, fire-starting, witch-creating lightning. This means you can transform pigs into zombie pigmen, villagers into witches, or just fry your enemies with the power of nature itself. The catch? It only works during thunderstorms and if there's nothing blocking the sky above your target. So if you're in a cave, underwater, or just experiencing a pleasant sunny day, your trident is just an ordinary pokey stick. Still, there's nothing quite like the satisfaction of calling down lightning on a creeper that was about to ruin your day. Just be careful using it near your wooden house or pet animals. Zeus wasn't known for his precision striking. Flame. Flame is the enchantment for archers who think regular arrows just aren't dramatic enough. With a single level, every arrow you fire becomes a miniature flying torch, setting fire to any mob or player unlucky enough to be on the receiving end. It's like fire aspect for bows, dealing 4 extra damage over time and turning your enemies into walking campfires. The beauty of flame is that even if your aim isn't perfect, just grazing an enemy will set them ablaze, giving you a chance to track their fiery trail as they run away in panic. It's particularly effective against Endermen, who will teleport randomly while burning, often right into water or more danger. Like fire aspect, it also cooks any meat from animals you hunt, saving you the trouble of using a furnace. The downside? It's completely useless in the rain, underwater, or against nether mobs that are already immune to fire. But for everyone else, there's something deeply satisfying about watching a skeleton panic as it slowly burns from a single well-placed flaming arrow. Infinity. Infinity is the enchantment for players who are terrible at inventory management or just really hate crafting arrows. With 1 level, this enchantment turns a single arrow in your inventory into an unlimited supply, letting you shoot forever without consuming resources. It's like having a magical quiver that never empties, making archery actually sustainable as a combat strategy. The catch? It doesn't work with special arrows like tipped arrows or spectral arrows, and it won't help you if you're using a crossbow instead of a bow. Even more importantly, it's mutually exclusive with mending, forcing you to choose between unlimited arrows or a bow that never breaks. Most players choose Infinity, since repairing a bow is easier than crafting thousands of arrows, especially if you're the type to miss 9 shots out of 10. After all, there's nothing worse than running out of arrows in the middle of a skeleton standoff, desperately hoping your last shot doesn't disappear into the void. Loyalty. Loyalty is the enchantment for trident users with commitment issues or just really bad aim. Instead of your trident getting lost in the ocean after a bad throw, loyalty makes it return to you like an aquatic boomerang. At level 1, it takes its sweet time coming back, but by level 3, it's practically teleporting into your hand the moment it hits something. This makes it perfect for combat, since you can throw your trident and get it back almost instantly for another attack, or for ocean exploration, since you don't have to swim after your weapon every time you miss a guardian. The only downside, if you throw your trident into the void or unloaded chunks, it's still gone forever, loyalty or not. And unlike Riptide, you can't use it to propel yourself through water. It's strictly a "I'll be right back" enchantment. Still, for a weapon that's notoriously difficult to obtain, having a guarantee that it won't get lost with every throw is a game changer. Riptide. Riptide is less of an enchantment and more of a radical transportation method disguised as a weapon feature. Unlike normal tridents that you throw at enemies, a Riptide trident throws you instead. Stand in water or rain, fling your trident, and suddenly you're soaring through the air like a dolphin with rocket boosters. At level 1, it's a modest boost, but by level 3, you can cross oceans or scale mountains in seconds. It turns the trident from a mere weapon into the fastest travel method in the game, no elytra required. The catch? It only works when you're in water or rain, making it useless on sunny days or in the nether. And since you go with the trident, you can't use it to attack distant enemies. But for players who enjoy the feeling of being a human cannonball or just want to reach their mountaintop base without building 1,000 stairs, Riptide transforms mundane travel into an extreme sport. Just make sure there's water where you're landing, or you might discover why fall damage is still the #1 cause of player deaths. Multi-shot. Multi-shot is the enchantment for players who look at regular crossbows and think, "This needs more arrows." With a single level, your crossbow fires 3 arrows in a horizontal spread pattern instead of just 1, all while only consuming a single arrow from your inventory. It's like having a medieval shotgun, perfect for hitting enemies with poor dodging skills, or just covering more area with each shot. The downside? Only the center arrow can be recovered, meaning the other two disappear into the void, a small price to pay for triple the firepower. It's also mutually exclusive with piercing, forcing you to choose between hitting multiple targets with one shot or shooting through multiple targets with a single arrow. For crowd control or just making sure your aim doesn't have to be perfect, multi-shot turns your crossbow from a precision instrument into a wave of pointy death. Piercing. Piercing is the enchantment for crossbow users who hate wasting arrows on just one target. Each level lets your arrow pass through one additional entity, maxing out at level 4, where a single shot can hit 5 enemies in a row. It's perfect for lining up zombie headshots, firing into crowds of mobs, or just making the most efficient use of your ammo. Unlike multi-shot, which spreads your firepower horizontally, piercing keeps your shot focused, but extends its effective range through multiple targets. It's also uniquely useful against shielded enemies in both PvE and PvP, since it completely ignores shields regardless of when they were raised. The only catch is that it doesn't work with firework rockets, and it's mutually exclusive with multi-shot. But for players who value precision and efficiency over raw spread damage, piercing transforms your crossbow from a single target weapon into a mob-penetrating death beam. Power. Power is to bows what sharpness is to swords. Pure, straightforward damage boosting with no fancy conditions. Each level adds 25% more damage, meaning at power 5, your arrows deal 150% extra damage on top of the base bow damage. It's the difference between peppering a creeper with 3 or 4 arrows and taking it down with a single well-placed shot. For reference, a full charge power 5 bow can deal up to 11 hearts of damage with a critical hit, enough to one-shot most mobs and players without armor. It's simple, effective, and works against everything from zombies to the Ender Dragon. Unlike specialized enchantments, there's no situation where power isn't useful, making it the first enchantment most archers go for. Pair it with Flame for burn damage, Punch for knockback, and Infinity for unlimited arrows, and you've got a ranged weapon that makes even the most dedicated sword users consider switching teams. Punch. Punch is knockback's ranged cousin, sending anything hit by your arrows flying backward like they've been hit by a medieval cannon. At level 1, targets are launched an extra 3 blocks, and at level 2, that doubles to 6 blocks. It's perfect for keeping creepers at a safe distance, pushing mobs off cliffs, or just creating space between you and an advancing horde. In PvP, it's particularly annoying as it can prevent players from reaching you while you continue to rain arrows on their retreating forms. Of course, like knockback, it can sometimes work against you, pushing enemies out of range or sending them flying into water where they can recover. It's also useless against the Ender Dragon and other bosses that are immune to knockback effects. But for creating distance, controlling crowds, or just watching skeletons fly off mountains in hilarious arcs, Punch transforms your bow from a damage dealer into a mob launching machine. Quick Charge. Quick Charge is the enchantment that fixes crossbows' biggest flaw, their painfully slow loading time. Normally, you have to stand there counting Mississippi seconds while your character slowly pulls back the string, making you vulnerable to any mob that decides to interrupt your archery session. With Quick Charge, though, each level reduces loading time by a quarter second, maxing out at Quick Charge 3 for a 3/4 second reduction. This might not sound like much until you're in the middle of a heated battle, where that extra time can mean the difference between getting another shot off or getting a face full of zombie. It's particularly useful for PvP, where standing still for even a moment can be fatal. The only downside is that it caps at level 3, meaning crossbows are still slower than bows at maximum efficiency. Still, for players who prefer the higher damage and accuracy of crossbows over bows, Quick Charge turns a clunky weapon into a surprisingly viable combat option. Efficiency. Efficiency is less of an enchantment and more of a time machine because it gives you back hours of your life that would otherwise be spent mining blocks at the speed of continental drift. Each level makes your tool break blocks faster, with Efficiency 5 turning even diamond pickaxes into blocks of blur as you tear through stone like it's made of wet paper. At max level on a netherite pickaxe, you can mine stone so fast that the breaking animation barely has time to render, making strip mining or mountain terraforming projects actually tolerable instead of mind-numbingly tedious. It works on all tools too. Axes chop trees in seconds, shovels obliterate dirt and sand, and even hoes make quick work of leaves and hay bales. There's literally no downside to this enchantment unless you enjoy the meditative aspect of slowly chipping away at blocks. For most players though, getting Efficiency 5 is like upgrading from a bicycle to a rocket ship. You'll never want to go back to vanilla tools once you've experienced the joy of mining at warp speed. Fortune. Fortune is the enchantment that makes the Minecraft economy collapse under the weight of too many diamonds. Normally, mining ore blocks gives you a fixed amount of resources, 1 diamond per diamond ore for example. With Fortune though, each level increases your chance of getting multiple drops from a single block. At Fortune 3, the maximum level, you can get up to 4 diamonds from a single ore, turning a modest mining trip into a wealth explosion. It works on all sorts of blocks too. Coal, redstone, lapis lazuli, emeralds, nether quartz, and even crops like wheat and carrots. The only catch? It's mutually exclusive with Silk Touch, forcing you to choose between getting more resources or preserving the exact block you're mining. Most players end up carrying 2 pickaxes, one with Fortune for ores and one with Silk Touch for delicate operations. But when it comes to pure resource gathering, nothing beats the satisfaction of watching 3 or 4 diamonds pop out of a single ore block, turning your humble mine into a treasure trove that would make even the richest villager jealous. Luck of the Sea. Luck of the Sea is the enchantment for fishing aficionados who are tired of pulling up waterlogged boots instead of treasure. Each level increases your chances of catching valuable items while decreasing the odds of reeling in junk. At level 3, the maximum level, the probability of catching treasure, enchanted books, name tags, saddles, etc. increases by 6%, while the chance of getting junk drops by 6%. It doesn't sound like much until you've spent hours fishing and realized that small percentage makes a huge difference between inventory full of sticks and one filled with enchanted books. When paired with lore to speed up catch rates and an AFK fish farm, Luck of the Sea becomes one of the most efficient ways to gather enchanted books in the game. The best part? Unlike most specialized enchantments, there's absolutely no downside. Unless you're one of those weird players who actually wants more lily pads and rotten flesh from your fishing expeditions. Lure. Lure is the enchantment for impatient anglers or players who want to fish without watching the sun rise and set between catches. Each level reduces the average wait time for something to bite by 5 seconds, meaning at Lure 3, you're looking at catches coming in 15 seconds faster than they normally would. This transforms fishing from a test of patience into a viable method for gathering food and loot, especially when combined with Luck of the Sea to improve the quality of your catches. Whether you're fishing for sustenance, treasure, or just to pass the Minecraft day, Lure makes the whole process significantly less tedious. There's no real downside either. It's pure quality of life improvement that makes fishing feel less like watching paint dry and more like an actual gameplay activity. For AFK fish farm enthusiasts, it's an absolute necessity, turning an already efficient resource generator into a loot spawning machine gun. Silk Touch. Silk Touch is the enchantment for players who care more about aesthetics than efficiency. Instead of breaking blocks down into their component resources, this enchantment lets you harvest the actual block itself. Diamond ore instead of diamonds, grass blocks instead of dirt, glass instead of nothing. It's perfect for collectors, decorators, or just anyone who needs specific blocks for building projects. Want to move a bee nest without angering its inhabitants? Silk Touch. Need to gather ice without it melting? Silk Touch. Want to collect ender dragon eggs, spawners, or coral without them dropping useless alternatives? You guessed it, Silk Touch. The trade-off is obvious. You're sacrificing resource multiplication from Fortune for the ability to preserve blocks in their natural state. Most serious players end up with 2 pickaxes, a Fortune one for resource gathering and a Silk Touch one for precision operations. It might not help you get rich with diamonds, but for anyone who wants to build with blocks that are normally impossible to obtain, Silk Touch is less of an enchantment and more of a creative mode cheat code for survival players. And that's every Minecraft enchantment explained between part 1 and 2. Did you enjoy this video? Let us know by liking, sharing the video, and subscribing to our YouTube channel for more high-quality Minecraft content. See you next time.